reflection, mirror light, and one of the things that I keep coming back to as I learn, as I teach, learn, read, investigate. I'll say different words. The degree to which it's surprised, shocked, the degree to which I somehow see God's word, God's relationship with us, as a reflection, a mirror. Right? And I find that image, to me, helpful. Right? What am I doing here? The reason I find it helpful is because I see the Bible as a mirror. And if you think about it, what are you looking at in a mirror? The first thing you would think that you're seeing inside the mirror is yourself, right? Which makes total sense because I think that we do, right? But the other part to that is I think that we also see not only what we are, but also what we can be, or what our potential is to be, what we are becoming. The other thing that I think is a necessary part of it, if you can kind of get an idea of it, we also see within the mirror the face of God himself. We read the scriptures and then we study and then we meditate and contemplate. So I want you to hold in your hand that picture of a mirror, right? A mirror and a reflection. And what we're going to be talking about today is a subject that I think deals with every one of us in the position that we find ourselves as people, and as a church, and certainly whatever profession that you find yourself in. But one of those questions that you constantly, I think, have to ask yourself is, how am I doing with God? Okay? And I thought, the last time that I taught, one of the things that I said was, everything about you, everything that you feel, everything that you think, any of your opinion, your bigotry, your stances, your positions, are not only just a reflection of how you think, feel, or where you stand on a certain topic or whatever, but it also is a reflection of how you're doing with God. Right? Because what the tack I want to take on this is this. We're going to take a look at the Psalms, and then within that, a particular group of the Psalms. They're called the Psalms of Lamentation, or sometimes they're called the Psalms of Disorientation. And the surprising, shocking thing about that, rather than being a hymnal of praise, joy, and wonder, and joyful singing and the dancing, the shock to find out is that the number of Psalms of Disorientation and lamentation and groaning and complaining greatly outnumber the ones that are of praise. And I remember that kind of becoming apparent to me. It's like, how the psalmist really did make an effort to be pretty brutally honest about what they were writing about. So what am I supposed to learn from that? Right? And that's the nature of what we're looking at today. So what I would like to do is give you some tools to look at. And I'm going to look at these Psalms, 77, 73, Psalm 6, Psalm 88, and Psalm 139. So you kind of get yourself ready to go with that. We're going to look at the Psalm as the Psalm, this group of them, as a reflection, as a seat, as a mirror, not only to your soul, but also to the very heart of God himself. All right, now I also think before we go into this, I want to make some assumptions. All right? And we make them personal. I think we're entering into this fall, we're new teachers into the semester, into September, or whatever. And some decisions in your life are going to have to be made. All right? Whatever decisions they are. That might be related to family, job, church, health, finance. It can involve all kinds of things, but I would bet that most of you standing here, us, me, Shelley, our family, you're facing some sort of a decision. Right? We just perceive, I get the fact that we're all kind of at a crossroads in many parts of our lives. And so what we want to do is take what we can see in the Psalms, and let's see what they not only reveal, but also some attitudes and feelings that you might have that these particular songs are going through this way. All right? So we're going to look at how they expose us and the ways that we tend to deny where we are, and how it reveals not only who we really are, what we're running away from and what we're running towards, but also it's going to show enjoying preparing. Preparing for this, it was difficult. And I struggled with handling this and figuring out how to present it. And just, because every time I got to something, I thought, oh, the congregation really benefited from this. I found myself so stunned by what I was seeing and feeling. So I want to make some other adjustments. Let's go ahead and look at that next 2 or 3, maybe 4 slides. And then, apart from that, I'm going to make another assumption. The first assumption being that I bet you're at a crossroads right now at some point. Right? Some decision is going to be made. And it's going to be affecting your marriage, your life, everything about you. All right? The other assumption I want to make is this. In the midst of that, I think it's reasonable to think that you're probably a little bit anxious. And by anxious, let's amplify it just a little bit. If you take just a mild, subtle anxiety and you extend it just a tad, you're going to might as well use the word fear. Right? There's something about the future that's foreboding or threatening or fearful. Right? Also something, another assumption that I want to make. You're going to see in a lot of these songs this outright anger. All right? And I want you to think about right now. If you're thinking, well, I'm not an angry person. I'm kidding. Liar. Okay, well, no wonder you're deluded. You've got to deal with that first. Right? My lovely assistant. She's taller than me when she wears those shoes. She's taller than me when she doesn't. But just if you're not out angry at something, I can at least bet one thing. You're probably frustrated at something. Right? Exasperated. Miffed. Ticked off. Right? Somebody done you wrong. Something's not right in my finances. Something's not right in my job. Something's not right with my body. Something's not right with my wife. Something's not right with my kids. Something's not right with my parents. Something is not right. And I'm just not right about that. Right? Call it what it is. That's anger. All right? You're going to see an enormous amount of anger in these Psalms coming up. And so I want us to take that tack, the Psalms being a mirror and a voice of the soul. And what I would like you to do by the end of it is be able to take this group of Psalms and not just read them and see yourself in them, but to pray yourself through them. Let them offer the words to articulate the things that need to be articulated. Let them be, think of it this way, think of yourself praying the Psalms as Christ would pray for you. In other words, he's singing to you. All right? And as we get through these, I want you to hold that first image that you saw in your mind. Right? A mirror and a voice of the soul. All right. So based on the assumptions that you're probably angry right now in some way, you're probably afraid or anxious in some way, you're probably dealing with some sort of guilt or shame or contempt or mockery or some sort of a negative emotion. So we're going to go ahead and call these things the dark emotions, right? The negative emotions. These are the ones that are going to give rise to these Psalms of disorientation or lamentation that greatly outnumber the ones of the rest of the Psalms. All right. I need to make another presumption here. And I want you to get this. Emotions, as they're revealed in the Bible, are not amoral. Okay, you know what I mean by amoral? That they're neither moral nor immoral. That they're not bad or wrong. They just are. Right? And I think our society kind of likes us to think of emotions like that. Well, you're not at fault for having this kind of emotion. That there's nothing wrong necessarily right about it. In other words, it's a neutral moral stance on the emotion. I think you're going to find that the Psalms are going to disrupt that assumption. Right? Or at least challenge that assumption. Okay, so I want to go with that assumption number one, that emotions and feelings are not immoral. They do vocalize an inner dialogue, right? But they are not amoral. You're going to see as we go along that they're going to expose you. They're going to expose this illusion that we have that life is safe, that life is good, or that life is even predictable. When those negative emotions, those harmful, those ugly kind of things that crop up in the way we feel, I think that is why we're so intent on either avoiding them or dulling them. Okay? What I want to get to, though, is this. You must learn to value that kind of deep structure, that deep inner working and ticking of your soul, of the inside there, and not run away from it. Let it expose your struggle, okay, where you are right now. Okay, so assumption number one is that emotions are not amoral. The second assumption we have to get put up before we can go any further is this. In order for them to make any difference to you, you have to listen. You have to ponder what you're feeling and not just ignore it and run to deaden it. All right? Ponder it in order to be more deeply moved and compelled or propelled, right, into those issues of your heart and how God is dealing with you, how you are dealing with God, and how you are getting with others. Okay? All right, let's look at the next slide then. And I guess the third, maybe the fourth assumption would be this. The guide in all of this procedure is the Psalms. Right? Throughout the Psalms, we see this really, really complex interplay between body and soul. What happens in your soul is reflected in your body. Your body is not distinct or separate from what's going on inside of your own heart. Okay? You feel emotion, not just in your head, but in all of your body. Am I right on that? All you have to do is think of when you get nervous, you get butterflies in your stomach, right? Your body is going to respond to what's happening in your soul. Okay? The other assumption is that, and we're going to see this in the Psalms, is that truth is not necessarily theological, but truth is relational. And I think that's another assumption, and one thing you have to get as we're reading the Psalm. Truth is ultimately relational. All right? So why the Psalms? Well, the very component, the domain of relationship is poetry. The Psalms are poetry. Relationship is the domain of poetry. The Psalms are that. So poetry, as we begin, is God's invitation to you to glimpse, maybe for the first time, to glimpse the unseen. What you've denied, what you've undervalued, what you've failed to articulate. We're going to take care of that and give you the tools to look at that this morning. And the final assumption would be this. Every emotion that you feel, especially the dark ones, offer you a glimpse of the character of God. And that may seem odd or strange or shocking because you're thinking, remember, how could my anger, how could my frustration, my fear, my anxiety offer a reflection into the character of God? Well, unless you explore your own anger, there's no way that you're going to understand a righteous anger like God's. So the Psalms are going to mirror the soul. We're going to see ourselves. We're going to see what we're becoming. We're also going to see the heart of God. All right, I'm bringing this quote up here. If you've heard of John Calvin, I'm sure, but he says this interesting quote here. I see the Psalms as an anatomy of all parts of the soul, for there is not an emotion of which anyone can be conscious that is not here represented in the mirror. And you think, too, every emotion, every feeling that you've ever felt or will feel is somehow mirrored in and articulated for you in the Psalms. That's why it's such a powerful book for prayer, because it gives you the vocabulary to know how to pray. All right? And I just said that most of the Psalms are, well, they're kind of bluesy. Right? It's the blues, man. It's complaining, the groaning, the moaning, the crying, the accusations, even against God. And one Psalm 44 that we'll read in just a minute. Not only does he lash out in anger against God, but he actually accuses God of negligence, bad businessship, and even idiocy. Okay? Now, I doubt if we are that comfortable anymore to be that brutally honest with what we're feeling. I think we're faster to want to protect whatever piece of Eden we feel like is slipping away from us. And to pressure ourselves to do whatever is necessary, whatever technique that I need to force myself back into Eden. I think the Bible is going to instruct us not so fast. The reason that so many of the Psalms are blues is because there's something about them, about our heart, that must be dealt with. If we are to grow, if we are to pursue, we have to walk through periods of doubt, skepticism, frustration, uncertainty, desert. Okay? Next slide, please. And to illustrate my idea that it really isn't blues, Bono himself agrees with me. Right? What's so powerful about the Psalms, as well as there being gospel and songs of praise, which they are also the blues. And that's those bluesy songs that we're looking at this morning. Next slide. All right. We're going to start off then with Psalm 77, because this one actually opens it up so nicely. Let's read it together. Look at Psalm 77. I'd like you to keep track of the Psalms that we're doing this morning and go back and read them very slowly and carefully and deliberately yourself. But it starts off like this. I cry out to God. Yes, I shout. Oh, that God would listen to me. When I was in deep trouble, I searched for the Lord. All night long I prayed, with hands lifted toward heaven. Now get this. But my soul was not comforted. I sought God. Where was it? I think of God, and I moan, overwhelmed with longing for His. One of the things that the Psalms are going to do is that they're going to expose your own denial. Okay? This Asaph guy is uncomfortably honest with the fact that he feels distant from God, and nothing is comforting that sense of alienation. So the Psalms are going to expose something. These Psalms of complaint and accusation and confusion and doubt and heartache, not only do they greatly outnumber everything else in the Psalms, but it kind of challenges a myth. It challenges something that you probably have thought before, that I should be joyful. Right? I don't know how many times I've heard or been told. Right? You need to have faith. You need to trust in God. You need to confess your sins. You need to be joyful. You need to be more religious. How about a little more liturgy in your life? That'll fix you up. Right? Your problem is a lack of faith, Blake. You should be joyful because God is in control. When you're dealing with something that profound, I can think of nothing more absurd or even harmful than to say to somebody, you should be joyful because God is in control. God has opened an invitation to you here to struggle, to be invited into the desert and work with Him towards your heart as you're in denial of the very struggle that He's wanting you to enter into. These Psalms are going to disrupt the assumption that you can escape pain and flight and attempt to get away from the pain. They're going to expose the core of all your emotional turmoil, your frustration, your doubt, your skepticism, your sense of frustration and hopelessness. I've done all this work, and what? What is left? What do I see? Debt, insecurity, doubt, and I don't know what tomorrow holds. What you're going to see then is a challenge in these Psalms that will expose your real true commitment, which is to find life apart from trusting God. This psalm screams into the face of that myth and exposes your denial. The denial that I don't have or cannot struggle. Something must be wrong with me. Let's take a look at the next slide. So if the Psalms expose our denial, there's also going to be a moment that we'll see in the next psalm that comes up where we see the Psalms disrupting and exposing delusion. I want you to think of delusion with another word. I want you to think of it as ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance in the sense that you're stupid, or that you lack intelligence, or that you're lacking information. I want you to think of delusion in the sense that you're not seeing reality as it is. you're not aware. You're not knowing what the truth actually is. The Psalms are going to do a fabulous job of exposing the degree to which you are deluded. You have adopted and you're responding to a reality that is not true. Think of it this way. One of the things I tell myself many, many times is what I feel about myself. And you think of your life right now, I feel like a failure. I got all this debt. My marriage is a wreck. I don't get along with anybody. I can't stand my boss. I can't stand my employees. My car won't start. Where is the point where my assessment of myself is just simply not God's assessment of me or the situation? Which one is actually true? And so what the Psalms will do is expose that. But once you're believing here actually is not right, and it will correct that. Remember that your feelings are not amoral. They're just as, you have to allow them to be just as tainted, I guess, with the fall as anything that you think or do or behave. Right? And so get away from this idea that especially a dark emotion, shame, guilt, fear, anger, are somehow just driven by the environment. Here's where I am. Here's the circumstance. Here's the situation. Here's what happened. Therefore, right? A cause and effect relationship. I feel this way because of this. Right? And move towards that the emotion is not just is not amoral. I mean, it's reflecting something, some kind of inner working in your soul, not just a simple behavioral response to your environment. Right? That kind of reduces your emotions if you think about it. It reduces to something not much more than what my God would do. Right? Let's take a look at the next slide. So as we expose these denials and these delusions, I'm going to put up the next slide right there. And as it exposes my anger, my fear, my jealousy, despair, contempt, shame, we're also going to see another, I guess, exposing, another disruption here. All right? And I want you to picture the circumstances that you are dealing with right now, especially as they're relational. Parents, business, children, spouse, job, employee. Picture your relationship, because that's where the action, that's where it's the playing field upon which the emotions are going to occur. All right? Psalm 73 is cruel, almost. It exposes the futility of, get this, of even trying to attempt to remain pure. Absolute, total frustration and futility. It almost rings of Ecclesiastes. It is pointless to attempt to be moral, righteous, holy, or pure. Let's read it. Psalm 73, also one of the songs of Asaph. Truly, God is good to Israel. I can't read that first line, but think of his sarcasm even in saying that. You can see him snarling while he's writing it. And you read the Psalms before, you're thinking, okay, it's one of those happy Psalms, right? Somebody get up, guitar and the tambourine, right? Truly, God is good to Israel, to those whose hearts are pure. But as for me, not me. I almost lost my footing. My feet were slipping. I was almost gone. Because I envied the proud when I saw them prosper. And get this, despite their wickedness. Not only God, how could you abandon me, but how could you bless them and not me? After all this. Why be pure when all God does is turn and bless someone else, especially the wicked? This is not emotions that are simply cause and effect based on an environment. This is struggle. This is soul-wrenching struggle. He's afraid. He's angry. He's envious. He's jealous. He's frustrated. And we're going to see as you go later into the psalm, you sense that he moves towards shame. In other words, he runs through in one single psalm the whole gamut of negative and dark emotions. Let's look at the fear aspect of this. Again, picture fear not just a simple terror or trembling, but picture it more kind of in modern terms. Picture like a low-grade level anxiety. Right? The type of stuff we take medication for. Right? I want to be careful with this, because to take an emotional problem that is so profound, or so deep, or so intense, to say to someone that all you need is this little simple solution seems cruel to me. And also regarding the fact that so many times what's going on in your head and your heart is manifested in your body. So to simply apply a simplistic solution to that seems absolutely inappropriate. But get this, all fear is relating to one core question that he's asking himself in the subtext here. It's what's not on the page that you want to be wondering about. What he's asking is the core of fear, and that is this question: is life predictable? Will you, God, protect me? Because it doesn't seem like you are. All anger is asking one basic question. And you think, I've never been angry. And no, yeah, you're a liar. Right? Because you are. You're angry. You just may be not as angry as you think. Right? It may be a low-grade frustration and anger. It may come out, like road rage and stuff like that. It's not that you're angry that the guy popped out in front of you. Something's going on inside of your heart that causes you to respond in that manner in the first place. But all anger is simply asking, is life fair? Is this just? Now, I want you to do one thing with that word life, right? Because the Bible teaches that who is life? Who is the originator of life? In him is life, right? So what is life? God. And so I want you to do this. Not is life predictable, but is God predictable? Is life fair? No. Is God fair? Why is life unjust? And that horrible, wrenching question, is God unjust? I know logically that he's not. But man, I don't feel it. I don't see it happening. Replace life with God, and you have stepped into the arena where you must wrestle with God, or you will flee, and you will stay in that point of immaturity, stagnation, going backwards. And think of it also this way too. He's making some pretty profound theological statements there too. Recall what I said just at the beginning. Every emotion is a theological statement. Theology is nothing more than how is God related to me and I'm related to God. That's theology. Every emotion then is a theological statement. How am I doing with God? How do you think this guy's doing with God right now? When all feelings are exposed, all feelings expose your attempt, my attempt, to regain Eden. When you think about it, we want back the pleasure, the perfection, the stability that we believe really is ours, that I have a right to. These emotions are going to reveal your failed attempt to regain that or protect it or crawl scraping back into it. Read it again. I almost lost my footing. My feet were slipping and I was almost going, for I envied the proud when I saw them prosper despite their wickedness. I encourage you to read the rest of the psalm. What I'm going to tell you is this, that all these dark emotions that you're seeing on the screen here are rooted in mine, and Asaph's fight response. Eden has slipped away. The only option then is to fight and angrily demand access back into what is mine, or flee. And I promise you this too. Your natural tendency is going to flee the pain. And your driving goal is to figure out some way to gain relief from the pain. Whether it's just ignoring it, or whether it's in some other way that you have, some technique that you figured out, some habit that you have to relieve the pain. And when you're that desperate. Listen to this verse in Isaiah chapter 8:21. Distressed and hungry, then you will wander around. You will become enraged. You will look up finally and curse your king and your God. Why? Because he could alleviate that. God could alleviate my suffering and doesn't. And so I turn my rage against him. As you can see here, I feel justified. God obviously is not acting on my behalf and all this stuff that's going on in my life, and so I feel completely justified to act on my own behalf. I will not wait. My most profound belief, God, is that you are not just. I'm tired of waiting. I must act on my own. Instead of the struggle, I fled. Let's take a look at the next slide. One of the things that the Psalms are going to do then, Psalm 77, Psalm 73, they're going to do something very odd. And I found this kind of shocking. They're going to expose and disrupt your pretense. The assumption that all your anger and all your frustration and all your fear are not directed against God. Think about that for a second. The Psalms will expose your pretense that your anger, your anxiety, your fear, your jealousy are not directed against God. They actually are. You just would rather they be directed against someone else or your circumstances. The problem then is not the situation, financial or relational or job or otherwise. The problem is not the situation that provoked your frustration or your anger or your anxiety. The problem is that your heart, your soul, is opposed to God. Think, oh, Blake, you've done it again. You make me come in here, and every time you preach, you make me feel really good about myself. Right? Thanks for that, and you've done it again. Right? Good thing you didn't put your tip jar up here because, man, it's going to leave a big one for you till now. So read and pray the Psalms a little bit here. Oddly, in the midst of all of this, there's this really strange thing that actually is happening. As you see this, and as you see all this accusation and moaning and complaining, there's a curious invitation going on. Kind of a working, and God behaving in a really revealing, kind of an unusual way. Picture God, in the midst of all these types of psalms, as offering you an invitation. An invitation to join with him and question and doubt and rage against God. Goodness, what? How? You can't do that. You can't question God. You can't doubt God. You can't rage against God. Then you haven't read these things. Unless you go through a period of desert and questioning and doubting, you cannot grow. You will remain static and stagnant, content, maybe passively moral, ethical. I'm a good person. I obey the commandments. I go to church. I'm mostly right. I'm not in trouble. The police aren't currently after me. I'm fine. You're also stagnant. And you're in denial. And you're probably deluded. The Psalms invite us to struggle, to wrestle with God as Jacob did. What did God finally do with Jacob? Remember that beautiful, that wonderful, strange scene. Other than the burning bush, I think that scene where Jacob wrestled with God might be the strangest encounter in the Bible. Wrestled with God all night, and then finally, in the end, as a reward, he breaks your hip. Good going. Right here. So what we see here actually is an invitation to hurt. An invitation to feel this type of gnawing, this type of pain. And again, whether it's a low level, frustration, anxiety, jealousy, envy, or whether it's a burning, murderous rage, or a crippling terror and anxiety, and panic, right? It's still, you're seeing here, an invitation to hurt and rage. These Psalms will give you the words to vocalize your struggle. Picture this also. Many of these Psalms are 3,000 years old. The psalmists have gone before you and offered the words to articulate your confusion. How would you not want to read and pray these things? Not just read it to understand it, not just say, okay, there, I read it, cool. To pray it, to picture it, to feel it, to imagine maybe Jesus praying it with you and for you and alongside you. You are not going to be able to help entering into a period of pondering and contemplation, meditation, or tears, or anger. You might want to get alone, because you might end up screaming, or crying, or punching something. The Psalms teach that in the midst of conflict, you can learn to love God. Next slide. Let's take a look at this psalm right here. Psalm 6. Verses 6 and 7 say, I am worn out from sobbing. All night I flood my bed with weeping, drenching it with my tears. My vision is blurred by grief. My eyes are worn out because of all my enemies. One of the things that I see crying out in this psalm is the psalmist's unwillingness. He is utterly unwilling to hide behind any trite or shallow religious little platitudes, moralism, and commandments, and rightness, and Sunday schoolishness, and ethics. He's so far past that. An unwillingness to hide behind these religious platitudes like, well, just trust God. You need to have more faith. Maybe you haven't confessed your sins. Check out the mockery of Psalm 44. It's not on the slide up there, but I'm just going to read it to you. This is Psalm 44, verses 11 and 12. The psalmist said, you, talking to God, you have tossed us aside in dishonor. You no longer lead us. You make us retreat from our enemies and allow those who hate us to plunder us. You have butchered us like sheep and scattered us. You scold your people for a pittance, and making nothing on the sale. God's a bad businessman. He's forgotten us. He's negligent. And he's a poor decision maker. Read Psalm 44. Read it yourself. Get it. Read that mockery. He accuses God of everything under the sun. And by the way, the psalm doesn't end very happy either. Well, it says, rise up and help us. Ransom us because of your unfailing love. We are collapsing in the dust, lying face down in the dirt. Where are you? And don't say this. All right, don't go here with the psalm. Don't say, well, I get it. I see that they're all pretty tough. I agree with that. But the Psalms didn't have Christ to lean on. So we really don't have to be that bad, that worn out, that lonely, that angry, that afraid, that desperate, that frustrated, that anxious. But let me tell you something. That attitude is not faith. That's presumption. I mean, look at the life, look at the suffering of Christ himself. Look at his massive quoting in the entire New Testament, quoting massive passages of what? The Psalms. Right? I think that attitude is just inappropriate. These Psalms have been negated or outdated because now I don't have to suffer anymore. What planet are you from? Where have you been? What Bible do you read? My goodness. The Psalms are not a 12-step how-to program to manually, to manage, to solve, to work on all of your emotional problems. You're not going to find that. Oh, all you got to do is this. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Right? Or a 12-step program, follow the Psalms. It's a manual. You get your life back on track. Right? Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not going to work that way. It is, however, an invitation to ponder the mystery, the absolute mystery that just blows my mind when I read these things. The mystery of God's desire to pursue you. A sacred romance. What's that book, Bill? The Sacred Romance? John Eldridge? It's a romance. He's after you. The Psalms invite you then to question God, but in the context of worship. That just blows my mind thinking of that. It invites us to question, to scream, to rage, to be confused, to wonder about a decision I have to make up. Should I do this? Should I do that? Even simple decisions that I'm not finding any help, right? The Scripture is just not helping me decide. Toyota, not Nissan. Ford, not General Motors, right? Marry this person, not that person. Take this job, not that job. Say this to your boss or employee, not that. And you don't see that. What we do see in the Psalms is an invitation to question. And the context of that questioning is a type of worship. It invites us to bring before God everything of your rage, of your doubt, of your terror. And struggle is that necessary step that must take place. Okay? All right. I want you to look there at the next slide. We're going to, about the last 3 to 5 minutes here. Now, in all of our raging, we're going to start seeing some of God's curious response to this. Watch this. The last one, that's a psalm of disorientation. Look how disoriented this is. You've driven my friends away. You have driven my friends away. By making me repulsive to them, I'm in a trap with no way to escape. My eyes are blinded by my tears. Each day I beg for your help, O Lord. I lift my hands to you for mercy. Are your wonderful deeds of any use to the dead? Do the dead rise up and praise you? Can those in the grave declare your unfailing love? Can they proclaim your faithfulness in the place of destruction? What I see a lot of there, look, the last 3 sentences, he's questioning. Why? Where are you? But look at God's response to this. Go ahead and pull up the next slide. It is utterly shocking that in the midst of all of this, that I'd like you to move into, you're going to be surprised by God's response to our anger and our fear. We assume that He wants from you order, conformity, religiousness, liturgy, morality, obedience, Sunday schoolishness, churchiness. But what you're going to find is a God who is pursuing a passionate involvement with you to share with you the mystery of His character. In all of this, don't be surprised if He doesn't offer a solution other than Himself, other than relationship. So what is He going to do? Look at that next slide. He's going to draw you. I want you to get this picture right here. And then we're going to sing This Is Our God, because I think that song is so powerfully puts in a song what we're looking at here. Okay? So music guys, we can go ahead and start getting ready. But listen to this. Everybody listening? God is going to continue to draw you to an extreme edge of life. Right? You listening? Whatever your circumstances are, He's going to keep drawing you to an edge. He's going to keep drawing you to a desert and to a place where you cannot live by any kind of more careful planning and control. And the darkness, the desert, this extreme place, is going to put you in a point of struggle where there's nothing left to do. There's nothing left except utter, complete dependence on God and the mystery of His relationship. It's like this. I read this when I was studying for this, and I'm amazed by this. Can you get this thought? It's as if His passion for us is so intense that He's actually rigged the world and your circumstances. He's rigged and orchestrated your circumstances to compel you to deal with whatever is blocking you from becoming like His Son. He's orchestrating it. He's passionate for that relationship with you. And so, therefore, He doesn't respond as we would expect. Think about how brutal those Psalms were. Honest, harsh, accusatory. Way more than probably what you would ever dare to say to God in your prayers, right? How does God respond? Well, take a look. This will blow you away. We attack, he does not judge. We demand rescue. Why don't you protect me? We demand rescue. What does he do instead? He reveals his own heart. Your darkest feelings, in some bent way, in some skewed way, reveal a little bit of God's own emotional life. So how can we understand? How can you understand the nature of God's, like I said at the beginning, how can you begin to understand the nature of God's holy and righteous anger unless you enter into your own? And all you've ever heard is, don't be angry. You ever heard that? Well, you shouldn't be so angry. That is absurd. But you probably should feel, oh, that hopefully you won't hit anybody or crash your car into something. But should you not explore that? The Psalms then will expose you. But take a look at this. A God who reveals himself in the midst of our struggle. Look at the way God actually responds to all of your moaning and all of your crying. Lord, you've examined my heart. You know everything about me. You know when I sit down and stand up. You know my thoughts, even when I'm far away. You read them. I can never escape from your spirit. All these places that I've been, in this desert and extremeness of life, not where were you, but you were there all the time. I can never get away from your presence. If I ride the wings of the morning, if I dwell by the farthest ocean, even there, your hand will guide me, and your strength will support me. I could ask the darkness to hide me. Darkness that you're in, I can hide in the darkness, but even the light around me. I could ask the darkness to hide me, and the light around me to become night. But even in darkness, I cannot hide from you. To you, the night shines as bright as the day. Darkness and light